Welcome, fellow nerds, friends, family, individuals of this complicated planet we call home, to another episode of the Writ, the show that never takes itself too seriously, except for when it does. We're taking a break from our Why is blank so hard to write due to several tragic, unforeseen circumstances that have hit both of us recently. We both decided to talk about them and use our experiences to help writers in this difficult topic.
Fittingly, we're celebrating Memorial Day right around the time that we record this.
Right, exactly.
So we figured, for listeners, eagle-eared listeners, no, that's not the right term. For rabbit-eared listeners, I guess.
What's up with good hearing? A lot of predators have good hearing.
Well, for dog-eared listeners.
Yeah, dogs have pretty good hearing.
For dog-eared listeners, you'll notice that we are in the same place. But we're actually in the same room recording this. It's been quite some time.
Yeah.
The circumstances aren't great, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yes.
This is something else. I mean, it's not really part of the set, but I guess it's kind of along the same thematic lines.
Why is grief so hard to write?
It is. Although I'm not really worried about how taking it beyond.
Right.
More just how do you process it?
Yeah.
In your own style of writing, in your own life.
Right, exactly.
But to explain some circumstances, I'm going to let...
Yeah, well, we both got things to talk about here.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so earlier this year, starting off, earlier this year, my uncle died. He was mentally disabled, but very, very sweet. He loved animals and caves and high-tension towers and planes and trains and...
Maps.
Yep, other random things. Like, he loved that Matt here was born in California. He loved that my friend Christina, who's been on the show many times, was born in Romania. He always welcomed her to America, even though she had been here for
basically
since she was 4 months old. Yeah. He had the memory of a supercomputer, like especially the dates of events, and he loved watching old TV shows and talking about all the caves he's visited throughout the country.
Right.
Both of us were two of his favorite Matts. He had a whole list, like his neighbor in Oklahoma.
That is true. There were a few on there. Too many Matts in our lives. Not that I want to change this, just...
Oh yeah, there's too many Matts. I need to take care of one of them. Oh, we're back to the missiles.
No.
Okay.
And this is totally us. We're trying to process through humor.
Yeah, so. No. Like I will always be a funny person.
Please excuse our gallows humor. In some cases.
Exactly. So, anyways, that's my first thing.
Yep. Earlier this week, literally less than a week ago, as we're recording this, I lost my father in a car accident.
Oh man.
He was a caring and supportive parent who loved bad puns.
Yes, he did.
And is survived by his wife and 3 children. The man never missed a chance to tell those he loved that he did.
Yes.
His devotion to his family, his faith, and his country were visible to all he knew.
Exactly. And just a few days before we're recording this, I lost my pet Cockatiel, Penny. He had a head injury that he received months ago, and it finally took a toll on his brain. Like, it's not exactly the same as losing a father, but... it's hit me really hard.
Well, and pets are loved ones, part of our family too.
Yeah.
So,
like, Penny was my spoiled rotten baby. He's been on the podcast several times. You guys have heard him quite a few times. Most notably as the killer in the episode 26 skit. Like, I actually recorded his chirps for that. I mean, obviously I edited them in when I needed them to, but and he's mentioned in the About the Author section of all the currently published installments of Megazoic. So if you have a copy with you can go check that out.
Yep.
But obviously, he won't be in the final Megazoic book coming next month. I'd change it to he lives in Howlands Ranch, Colorado. No, with his Cockatiel Penny anymore.
Well, I mean, it would be really sad to put he lived just to have the name in there, right? That seems really bad.
Right. Plus, if I say if he lived in Howlands Ranch, Colorado, it makes it seem like I
like
died.
you died. So, there is that too. But obviously, we've been dealing with a lot of grief in the last... short period of time, even.
Right.
Obviously, like, listeners know that I'm not usually in the U.S. of late, but obviously I came back because of my father.
He rushed back home.
Yeah, I was on a plane as fast as I could to make it back.
And thankfully, your company over there was happy to let you. Like, Japanese are very keen on family, right? They know the value.
Yes, they were very supportive. They said, just go home, be with your family, support them. Don't even think about work. A little hard to do that. I'm in the middle of some negotiations that one hand does not know what the other hand is doing unless I say something. So I can't really completely just skip on work. But,
right, exactly.
They even drove me to the airport.
Nice. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, they took me to the airport because they wanted to see me off. Mm-hmm. So it was really sweet of them. And if they ever listened to this in such a way they could understand, because, native Japanese speakers, thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for me too. Like these have hit me hard too. Like your dad was so fun. Like I still remember some great memories of them. I remember him making this terrible pun at Taco Bell.
Which one?
I think it was something about an order was late, but there was an artwork that had like different number letters things, and one of them was L8. He says, "You mean it's L8?" And he pointed to it, and we were like, Bill, what is... Oh, sorry, you want me to cut that out?
No, you're good. That's
because
fine.
of personal details, but we were like, oh, come on.
But, that was entirely my dad.
Yeah.
We experienced these things in such a short period of time, we decided to talk about grief. Obviously, Memorial Day exists to memorialize those who've gone on, either in your own family.
I think it's
100% sure it's just military, so don't quote me on that.
I think it's traditionally military, but it can probably be extended to whoever. Yeah.
Right. And it just so happened my dad, military veteran, happened to pass away before this. So, so how do you deal with grief in your writing? Because obviously we are a writing-focused podcast. Right.
But also, how do you deal with your own grief and can channel it through your writing?
Sure.
And so this is going to be one of our rare, if thus far only, very special episodes of the Writ. You know those cheesy sitcoms in the 80s and 90s where like it was all happy and goofy, but every now and then they have an episode about drugs or like death and they play
flaunting the Comics Code Authority to publish a story where Speedy used drugs.
Right, and they called it the Magia instead of the Mafia because of the Comics Code rule. They couldn't say the word Mafia. Did you hear about this?
Wouldn't surprise.
So they got around it by that, but they play sappy piano music during and these stuff. So
and this is the thing that you can't ignore about, especially in sitcoms. They're supposed to reflect real life. Real life is not always happy hunky dory, is it?
Nope, it's not.
But with a TV show, if you spend too much time on this, your audience isn't really going to want to watch it all that much.
No. That's why it's keep them sporadic.
So you have that one episode in the middle of a season, and then you go back to the usual thing.
Right, and that's what we'll do. We didn't do a skit for this time because I thought it'd be unnecessary. And
frankly, we might have more to talk about if we get a little too emotional about talking about our own stuff. So.
Right. So, so we're going to talk about grief. Now that both of us have dealt with grief over our losses, how would we describe how it feels? That's what we're going to talk about here. So people lucky enough not to have experienced it yet, you will, everyone does, can accurately portray it in their writing.
I realize that you just said to people who haven't experienced it, but to those of you who have lost an immediate family member, I now understand your pain much better.
Yeah.
With my grandfather, 14 years ago, it was already 14 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
It was tough.
Yeah.
But, it's my grandfather.
Right.
My mother, his daughter, was deeply shaken by it. But for me, I was a little young to process it correctly.
Right. I still remember you being very sad at the time.
Well, yeah, I was, because I loved my grandpa. But I didn't actually finish dealing with it. More on that on a later thing. So I'll get back to that. But this time, I had the distinct displeasure of being in a place where I was powerless to do a goddamn thing. There is a special level of the grief cycle for those who live half a world away.
Exactly. I can imagine. I haven't experienced it, but I can totally imagine.
And I can tell you how many people were, posting on my Facebook page about how they can't even imagine what it's like to being that far. But,
right.
You've
got a lot of good responses on Facebook, including quite a few guest stars of the podcast.
Yep. Well, we're not going to mention them all, but thank you. I really appreciate your condolences, and well wishes, because it means a lot. It was so helpful, especially when I was still in Japan, just waiting, not able to do anything. The fact that I got immediate responses from lots of people. Well, I'll talk more about that in a little bit as well.
Yes.
In this case, less than 20 hours after hearing about my father's car accident, I had to board a transcontinental flight.
Right, which I'm sure is difficult to work out, right?
Less than 5 minutes before I stood in line to board this plane, I heard that he was joining the angels above us.
I heard, I didn't know that you knew before you got on the plane. In some ways, though, I feel like, at least for me, that makes it a tiny bit better than if you get on the plane still not knowing. I don't know, is that right or am I wrong?
Well, I'll let me finish my piece here and I'll tell you just how it felt. Because I think that my dad was amazing, given that we never let "I love you" go unsaid.
Right.
And I did at least get to say my piece to him before he passed.
Yes.
But imagine sitting on a plane, striving to get back across the globe, knowing you wouldn't meet your beloved family member when you made it, and then have to wait on the tarmac for 50 extra minutes?
Yeah, okay, so maybe it wasn't better. But
I told my seatmate, the person who was sitting next to me, when we found out there was going to be a 50-minute delay, it was a weather problem, so we couldn't get clearance for takeoff.
Right. I
told her, well, silver linings. At least I'm not waiting to hear that he died.
Yeah, that's true. I would be on the edge of my seat the whole time.
If you didn't know.
If I didn't
because
know.
Then you're like in the air, you can't access your phone to get any information without paying for freaking Wi-Fi.
Which I might just end up doing.
Because
I would have to know. Like, I could not focus on anything else. Like, all those movies you have for, like, in transcontinental flights, I wouldn't be able to watch them. I would just be
There weren't actually that many interesting movies this time.
You watched a few.
I watched a couple of movies, but none of them were like ones I'd normally watch on a plane. It was just to kill the time.
One of them was Horrible Bosses, you said?
Horrible Bosses. It was kind of amusing.
Bit of a random one.
I heard about it and I wanted to see the movie, but I hadn't before.
There is a sequel. I heard it's not as good, but most sequels are not as good.
And then the third one's great. Anyway.
Is there a third one yet?
No, I'm saying that, in that pattern, the third one's usually great.
Sometimes, yes.
Anyways, obviously not all stories are the same.
Right.
But I would never wish that fate upon anyone.
I can imagine.
I don't expect listeners to really call much from what I just said, but one thing that is universal in the face of grief.
Yes.
How much people will throw their support behind you.
Right.
It has the magical power to reunite people, bring families closer together, and dissolve borders that existed for years.
Right, exactly.
I wish there was a way to tell you what it feels like, but since we all process it differently, I can't describe that feeling for you. And you need to understand some sadness to truly appreciate happiness in life.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that people react to this kind of stuff strongly in the immediate stages. But they will move on faster than you.
Absolutely.
I had some friends who'd offered their prayers and condolences in a post 10 minutes later, congratulating the birth of a new child of a different friend. Life happens.
Yeah. There's life and death.
I had a friend in college who is active military.
Right.
He's coming home this weekend.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, his wife heard about the fact that, my dad passed away, and all the while she's still preparing for her husband to come home.
Yeah, you can't just set everything aside that you already have.
I said it, there's not a handy little pause button to just
Wouldn't that
pause
be nice?
Life and take care of what you need to take care of.
That would be so nice.
But life happens.
Yeah.
But that does not mean they do not care. Obviously, they reach out for that reason. They do want you to know that you are supported. I'm gonna repeat myself if I continue for right now, so I'll let it go.
Okay.
Donald.
Yes.
What do you got?
Okay, well, I can say from experience that the 5 stages of grief thing is quite accurate. For a refresher, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Not always in that order, and it's not like as soon as you go to one, you can't go back and forth around them.
Yeah.
So for my uncle, and also my dog Dani, who I didn't mention earlier, but she died earlier this month. It's been a real crappy month, guys. Thank you. You just patted my leg there.
I felt like that was the easiest thing to reach.
Thanks. So I'm in the acceptance stage with them. Like, both of them are old and lived a long and eventful life, so their deaths were easier for me to accept.
Yep.
Now, for my Cockatiel Penny, I'm currently in the depression stage. I miss snuggling with my bird, hearing him call out my name. Like, whenever I came home, he'd literally say, Matthew! Matthew! Like, he learned it from my dad, because my dad would always like, Matthew! Matthew! And then, like, he knew it was me, and I could tell he knew it was me because I would be holding him, and then someone else would come through the door, and he'd call out, but it would not be Matthew. He saved that one for me. He knew it was my name.
Smart bird.
Yeah. And he'd always sit on my shoulder when I'd sit at my computer. I miss that. The despair I feel when I come home and I don't hear him calling my name. When I see an empty space where his cage used to be. And when I reflect about his last moments with me, it's too much sometimes. Penny was always with me. When I went to college, he stayed in the apartment with me. When I came home, he'd always be on my shoulder. He was probably in a third of my Instagram or Facebook pictures. He was a part of me. He was an extension of my goofy, innocent dinosaur side.
Descendant.
Yeah. And he fought monsters with me as I played video games. He left gross little presents on my shirt and my floor to show...
all the time.
To show how much at home he felt with me.
Right.
He was mentioned in the About the Author parts of my Megazoic books because I couldn't talk about myself without mentioning him.
Yeah.
And now he's gone. And it's like a part of me has died along with him. Like, I think the worst thing that feels the emptiness. There's a void in my heart that can't be filled, even if I just get another Cockatiel. Mm-hmm. I'll persist, I'll continue, but he won't. His story is over, and mine is still going. And right now, even 48 hours after his death, it's still hard for me to imagine a future without him in it. So listeners, if you got anything out of this long reflection about some damn bird, I hope you understand how little about how I feel and use those feelings when writing about grief.
It affects all of us in ways that we can't even fathom until we experience it. Even if it's something, even if it's something like a very pampered pet.
You always went on about how pampered they were.
Even if it's something like an immediate family member, or if it's just someone that you knew for a long time in your life, like his uncle, my grandfather. Mm-hmm. You know, these feelings that we understand, we can use. So hopefully you hear how forlorn we can get, and you understand that that is a sensible reaction for characters of your own that might be experiencing this. Obviously, there is no substitute. Even though I don't want any of you to go through this, at some point, this kind of event will happen in your life.
It will.
So at that time, and I'll talk more about, for your own sake, what works best for you when you get to this circumstance. Your characters are different. They are not they are not like you. They are a reflection of your ideas, your style. So some of them will react the same way. So a lot of them don't. Thankfully, you've got a lot of other people that have grief in their past that could tell you how they reacted, and so there are many ways to handle this in your characters.
Yes.
But here's a good question.
Yeah.
When writing about grief, what are other things that writers should do to best reflect it?
What are other things?
Speaking from my own experience, this is all. I mean, it's really been a rough week, just getting used to not seeing him anymore.
Yeah, no, I get that.
If this had not happened, I wouldn't even be here right now.
Of course.
I'd be going on with life the way I normally do, and your mind does not work the way you need it to.
Right. No, exactly.
You start one task only to get interrupted and forget about 5 more things to add to the to-do list.
Right, exactly.
Perfect example, but we are trying to get the house ready because after the memorial service for my father, we'll have an open house so people can come and, commiserate with us, share stories of him, try and raise our spirits, or, just spend time because they care about the family that my dad left behind.
I hope to go to that. I want to go to that too. So
Well, I'll tell you off the podcast when it is. But anyway,
yes.
But we're trying to do all of these things so that the house is presentable, and my mom will start one task, and then all of a sudden something else comes up.
Right.
She puts it down, and then all of a sudden she's going back to something else, forgot to finish it, forgot to do it at all.
Right.
It does not, your mind does not work the way you need it to.
Nope.
Randomly breaking into tears at the reminder of their loss.
Yes.
For me, the little things Dad used to do that I have to take care of now, or somebody else, it cuts like little knives.
Exactly.
Right now, not being able to settle down because you're just on edge, not being able to sleep quite as well, you don't feel as hungry until you start getting to a place nearer acceptance.
Right.
All people want time to process their grief.
Yes.
Some will ask for companionship, even if it's mostly a distraction.
Right.
And others want to go it alone and wallow.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that no two characters will process the same way, even if it's the same character they lost.
Right, exactly.
My mom and I are not processing this exactly the same way. My brother and I are not processing this the same way. My sister and I are not processing it the same way, even though for all of us, we have the common person.
Yeah, exactly.
Not like it's great writing, but I suppose it'd be excusable to have less sensible choices and sudden shifts in mood in this circumstance.
That would be something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because normally you're rational. Normally you're logical. Well, if this character's logical, right? But grief can throw all of that out the window because you just don't know how to respond.
Right. No, I get that. I was going to mention an example in my story, but the thing is, it's kind of a spoiler, and I don't know if this is the best episode to really have a time code and have people skip around.
No.
Yeah, so I won't. I won't say names.
Well, I was about to say, if you can make it as vague as possible, like who he's referring to.
Someone in one of the books dies, and there are two characters who deal with it in different ways.
Right.
One of them deals with it grief and remembrance, keeping something they had on them at all times, and being very reluctant to let it go.
Sure.
Someone else mourns them for a hot second, and then is like, I'm going to act. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to honor his legacy in this way.
Right.
I'm going to
move forward.
And
one thing I will say is the keepsake model.
Yeah.
There can be more than one keepsake.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little personal, but I'm not worried. I don't mind keeping it in.
Okay.
My little sister was requesting my dad's wedding ring.
Oh, wow.
And my mom's like, nope, I'm keeping that one close to me for a while.
I can imagine. Yeah.
She's actually wearing it on her opposite hand. So
right.
This is how she will remember him going forward. And sometimes it's easy. I don't want to... Sorry, that's not the right thing to say. I don't think it's ever easy. There are some people who have it easier.
Yeah.
Processing their grief.
Mm-hmm.
And, they found whatever they need to get through it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, Donald.
Yes.
What are other things writers can do to showcase this better?
One of the ways I got to kind of combine the meta contextual with what's actually going on in the story, a really powerful way to show the grief of your characters is to make sure the audience was attached to the ones that were lost as well. So therefore, when they're gone, their absence is truly felt.
Right.
Meld the feelings of the characters in story with the readers outside of it. This way the readers can really get into the character's shoes and feel the same way. Mm-hmm. It allows you to show the grief rather than just tell it. Like, say how oh, this character is sad. Oh, this character, he mourned for his loss. Or something a little bit more flowery might not be as effective as this. And you can say it, but yeah, you just don't say that way. That feels less like in a cold outsider's perspective kind of way.
Well, and Donald grew up with 3 sisters, and I'm a bleeding heart. So when I get a character that I really like, and that character just happens to die, I've been known to get my eyes watering a little bit, and that's really effective writing. But it's not any one thing that the author did.
Yeah, But that, in a way, makes it kind of stronger.
Right. You feel the empathy for the character.
Yeah, because you feel sad yourself. Like, that's the best way one of the best ways to deal with it. Like,
and if it's character you just want dead, then you don't care.
Right.
I'm kidding.
Right. And also, if we can continue our grand tradition of this podcast for spoiling Harry Potter.
Oh, yes. Spoilers for Harry Potter, by the way.
So, and at the end of Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore dies, right?
Yes.
And he was in all the books as Harry's mentor. He was always there for him, bailing him out when he needed.
So when he showed up in 7.
That's true, but like for the most of it, he wasn't there though. Like he was only at the 7 in like a vision when when Harry was temporarily dead or whatever. Mm-hmm. But so his absence is really felt. There's no one Harry can go to for guidance. I mean, at least not in that regard.
Not effectively, no.
Yeah, and Sirius is also gone at this point, so he's like, yeah. Matt David's chewing something, listeners. It's alright, we all process our grief in different ways.
Grief eating, no, I'm kidding.
Just don't gain too much weight. We saw what happened in a recent superhero movie.
Yeah, no fat Thor for me, thank you.
I've said this, I think I've said this before you off podcast, but I thought it was funny. People are always like, yeah, I can finally cosplay as Thor now.
You did.
Yeah. I don't know if I said it in the podcast, but
no, I don't think you did.
Yeah,
not in the podcast.
I was going to edit that out because actually no, the Endgame spoiler zone is out now. Like people are doing stuff.
Marvel said A, it's okay, and B, frankly, it's not much of a spoiler to say that Thor got fat.
Yeah.
Time jump is a thing.
I do think in the Guardians of the Galaxy 3, there'll be like
bring it back.
What?
I hope they don't bring the fat suit back.
Well, no, what I'm thinking, because like remember in Infinity War, Peter was like, okay, I'm gonna get a Bowflex, and so in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it'll be Thor using it, and then Peter like, come on, it's my turn already. Thor's like, nope, I need to get back into shape. You'll get your turn, mortal.
As Guardians come first. Anyway,
on that tangent there.
Yeah, lovely tangent. Well, and again, listeners, this is totally us. Like even in the midst of our grief, we can't stop, laughing a little bit.
It doesn't.
Other jokes.
Yeah,
they're
still
not connected. Obviously, we still feel this pain, but some characters will simply move forward without any worry.
Yeah, and we're still us.
Well, we are. That's why we're joking and making random tangents.
But that doesn't mean we're not in pain. We're just.
And speaking of which,
oh my God.
Sorry, it was a bad. But that's us, right?
Yeah. So we've talked a little about like how to write grief, but now we're going to talk about when feeling grief of their own.
Right.
What are some ways writers can channel their emotions into their writing? It's a bit of a loaded question.
It is a loaded question. I honestly think it's not good to put your own grief into a story, unless it's a self-insert character.
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense. One example from my own writing, there's a character that I did base a little bit on my own self, and I used some experience. My grandfather, when he passed away, I wrote a eulogy. And based on the experience of getting up in front of people at the memorial service and speaking that, I wrote this scene for the character when his father, in story, passed away. Be true to your own experience.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I mentioned that I didn't process my grandpa's death very well.
Right.
Despite writing this eulogy and speaking at his memorial service. When you're good at compartmentalizing, or at least attempting to, like me, you tend to push the problem emotions away and pray they don't come up again.
Right.
But honestly, sitting down and being prompted to write about it, not expressly the death itself. I suppose I'll need to explain that story a bit more. There was a free write assignment in college.
Yeah.
Anyway, more on that in a sec if Donald says I should tell you.
Okay.
But sitting down and being prompted to write about it was cathartic once I burned through about half or more of a tissue box in one writing session.
We actually have a tissue box here next to our recording studio here.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Right. I didn't want to go through this without it because, emotions are weird. They're complex and sometimes inexplicable. And sometimes they just randomly go over you.
Yeah.
When you least expect it, when you least want to deal with it, it happens.
Yes.
It starts like the break in a dam, both in your eyes and your words. But once the full force of that pent-up emotion breaks through, it floods out, and suddenly you feel drained for releasing all that unwanted recollection.
Right.
This is why wise people encourage you to talk about it to others.
Yes.
The more you tell it, the easier it is to process. If you hold it in, prepare for a wellspring of tears, a flood of words, and an overflowing trash can of soppy Kleenex. But the most important part to keep sight of is this. Make sure to laugh, smile about the good memories. Luckily, the way we are wired means that those never have to go away.
Right.
I can freely remember the times curled up with my grandpa, the jokes I shared with my dad, because we both loved puns, and all of the good times that happened before they left for the next adventure.
Yeah.
It isn't easy to collect yourself and tell people about those fun stories, but it's much more enjoyable to try doing that through your tears than it is to wallow in pity that they're gone.
Right, exactly. No, it's definitely best to talk to people. Like, unless some people work better working out by themselves. But for our experience,
we said earlier, there are different ways to process grief. Some people like company.
Right.
I think at some point everybody needs some company. The question is, how much of it do they need to process?
Right.
Can you be on your own and process your grief, just cry the tears you need to and call it good?
Right.
Or do you need somebody to hear what you have to say so you can get that burden off your heart?
Right. Good thing he said that when we weren't talking.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to...
Henry, come up here! Come here, Henry!
So, that's my take on it.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, there are a couple of different places that I've tried processing my own emotions. I did... Oh, the free write. I should talk about that, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah, let's do that.
So when I was a sophomore in college, I was in a speaking and writing class. It was a dual communication credit for both, speech and written communication, which both of them I had to do.
Right.
So, kill two birds with one stone. Mm-hmm. And there was an assignment in that class.
Don't talk about killing birds. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry. I didn't honestly think about
How insensitive, David. No.
Shooting two bucks with the same bullet, I guess? I don't know.
Sure, why not? Apologies to all Bambi fans.
Buck, not doe.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, never mind then. Okay.
We're awful. Sorry. There will be some gallows humor, just warning you now. Anyway, the free write assignment was simple.
Yeah.
Start with the two words, I remember, and go from there.
Oh, God.
That was a fun one. I honestly don't know what possessed me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, it had already been 7 years since my grandfather passed.
Yeah.
7? 6?
5. 4.
3. Shut up.
2. 1.
So 4 years. It was 6 years. But anyway.
Yeah.
But I just started writing about it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I remember the time my grandfather died, and the feelings that I experienced, not being able to get to him in time. This is before Facebook was a thing.
Right.
So all of the grief that I experienced in not being able to reach him to say one last time how much he meant, how much I cared, and we didn't make it.
Right.
There was we were on a fun trip, and I told about this in the free write too. That we were on a rafting trip. We were going to sing in church that morning. God, I'm relitigating this whole thing again, aren't I?
Might as well.
Well, and this is 14 years ago now, so just imagine if it still can engender such an emotional response, which it does.
It was more than half your life ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, we were singing on a service at a church as part of this rafting trip because it was the church youth choir. And my mom and dad were coming up. We already knew we were going to see him. Mm-hmm. We were going to try and make it. We knew his health was bad.
Right.
And my mom and dad are in the front pew of the church that morning. As we're singing, we're having a great time. It's a fantastic, the best memory to that point in my life that I can think of.
Right.
And my mom's eyes are all red. I thought, she's so proud of us. It's great. We're making her cry.
Right.
We get our stuff, say goodbye to everybody, sit down in the car, and my mom leans in, and she has this look on her face that she cannot compose herself at all.
Right.
Keep in mind, this is her father. So.
Right, yes.
She just says, you tell him. Turns to her husband and says, you tell him. And so my dad had the impossible task of telling us that our beloved grandfather had passed away.
Right.
We were going to go see him one last time. We knew it was possibly one last time, but he passed away yesterday.
Right.
At that time in my life, I was heavily involved in barbershop harmony.
Right.
And I'd gone to this event and we had sung the song Softly As I Leave You. And so I actually quoted the lyrics of that song, which is also about death.
Right.
And included it because it was very similar. You know, this idea that, to explain a little bit, the song happens in a setting where the husband is laying on his deathbed. He knows his wife, he knows that he will die. And his wife is there supporting him with everything she's got because, of course, she wants to see him through this.
Right.
And there's a night when she's on the chair beside the bed, gently resting.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, before you wake up, before you try and pull me back, I'm going to go.
Right.
And just the idea that suddenly it's gone and, you know, trying to not inconvenience people. Honestly, it's more applicable to my father than it is to my grandfather, because my grandfather was struggling immensely with his health. He, I never saw this, but apparently he wouldn't eat, he couldn't drink, he could not sleep, and so he just withered.
Oh, God.
Basically.
But
for the last week of his life.
Right. That sounds terrible.
And I'm sure watching it, his wife, my grandmother, must have had the hardest time in the world dealing with that. So, you know, that song, when we workshopped the song, it was the first time that I had dealt with, oh my God, I'm singing as if I'm dying.
Right.
And at the time, I was only like 18 years old, so this is really traumatic. I was in tears. But because of the tears that elicited in me, I thought about it in relation to his death and wrote about it. And by the time I was done writing the lyrics, writing the memories, and burning through half the tissue box, it's like, it was amazing. Like this major weight had been lifted. Like, I didn't even realize I'd had all that grief.
And, oh, that sounds great. It sounds terrible and great at the same time.
And glutton for punishment that I am, I said, you know what, let's have another. So I started with, the
story, I like it. Another!
Right, basically. But the second one was, I remember when my classmate committed suicide.
Oh, that's right, I remember this too.
Senior year of high school. For some reason, he did not see the bright future that everyone else forecasted for him, and so he decided to take his own life.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't process my grief at all. I compartmentalized. I said, okay, you need a shoulder to cry on, I'm here. If you need somebody to talk to, I'm here. I'm not even going to bother worrying about my own emotions. I'm just going to be the support you need.
Right, exactly.
Which meant that I hadn't dealt with it.
Yes.
And so here it comes again. You know, I talk about my memories of this kid. Actually, he was older than me, so I don't know why I'm calling him kid. This friend of mine that I knew all the way back in elementary school, and all the memories that we'd shared, and we were in homeroom class together, so I literally saw him every week of high school. You know, and dealing with this, you start crying again.
Yep.
It was a very, very cathartic day for me.
I can imagine.
Turning that free write was not a great idea, but the professor was extraordinarily supportive and said, what a bold choice. And it's bold to write about that stuff and share it with people. It is to talk about it. Right,
and that's why we wanted to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, here.
So, sorry, I've monopolized this question. Don, what do you got to say?
All right, well, I will take that monopoly and turn it into a duopoly.
I suppose.
Okay. Writing how you feel in the moment can create some excellent content. Don't make it part of a story. At least don't initially expect it to be. Just open a blank document and write how you feel. Use those emotions in your word choices and the flows of your sentence.
Right.
Just pour yourself out to this. Just as a separate sort of thought piece.
Have you ever watched a dam break?
No.
It starts off with this tiny little crack, right?
Oh wait, no. I thought for some reason I thought you were talking about a show called A Dam Break. But no, I was like, no, you literally mean watching an actual dam break.
Yes,
I've seen footage of that. Yes.
Okay, and you know how it's small at first, but the onrushing force of this water, it just starts spilling out, and eventually more cracks appear, and eventually the wall collapses, and it just all floods out. Right.
Right.
That was my experience doing this.
Yeah, exactly. So get all that out, and then when you're feeling better, look at what you wrote and see if it triggers the emotions you felt when writing it. If it did, you did a good job, and then you can even repurpose it into one of your stories. You know, you can, and if you have the capability, remember how you felt when you felt your worst while writing moments that need that kind of emotion.
Yep.
Recall specific things. Recall your thoughts and feelings, like little things, like what was your physical state when you were depressed? Were you shivering? Were you sweaty or cold? Were you bottling it all in or crying openly? Dig deep. Really dig deep. And use that when your story calls for it. A character's struggles can feel so much more human and real when you use your own experiences while writing.
That eulogy that I tried writing, I actually concluded it in a story later on for my character, and I wish I could share it with you, but takes a lot of time anyway, so I'll just save it by saying that every time I read that, I tear up.
Yeah, well, that's good. It reminds you of the emotions you felt when writing it. So.
Well, because it is based somewhat on personal experience. As I said, I spoke at my grandfather's memorial service, planning to speak to my dad's too. I have to do that writing yet.
Better get on it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point
it's
being
not gonna, you can count as what we have writ for next time.
Yeah, great.
Speaking of which, as you guys can tell, we're not gonna have a what we have writ and what we writ.
Yeah, since we already went into the topic, I figured they already know that. But,
yeah.
That process, I ended up calling on those feelings to try and write this eulogy. Mm-hmm. And it made it so much easier. Like, I think you said it was so sad. Like, you were practically crying. I can't speak for you.
I rarely cried at fiction or stuff like that, but I came close. So
yeah,
there's several times I've started welling up. And
that is a compliment, even though it was stupid long-winded.
Yeah, well, that's just you. That's just your writing.
That is just me. There is truth to that.
I mean, like, normally I would think that, like, oh, every time I read this, I nearly cry. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of smug. This story's so good that I cry when I read it. But no, it's different here because you're talking about, like, the emotion. It reminds you of the emotions you felt when writing it. It's not necessarily, oh man, this is so damn good. I can.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm not. I'm trying not to just be full of myself. It's literally, it reminds me of my own pain and suffering that I experienced, and bringing those things back, and the fact that I tried translating it over to a story where it's not actually me, but just to speak to Donald's point, you could repurpose it if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, of course.
If it works for that character, then you could reuse it.
Right, exactly.
Or at least modify it.
But, okay. Well, so we've talked a little about how to have the characters deal with this, but how about other characters? How do you balance your character interactions when only one character is grieving?
Or, or family or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I suppose a better question is, how would you react if someone told you they had experienced a major loss?
Well, when I found out, I found out, I was in bed when I heard that your father got in a car accident and was not looking good, and I was just like, oh man. Like, I felt like it was like 7 in the morning and I could not fall back asleep. So.
And just imagine how I had to go to bed because of the time difference.
Right.
Because I had to get on a plane and my mom knew it was going to be exhausting either way, so she's like, make sure to get some sleep. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, your mind just races.
Well, I mean, the reason I asked that question, and not expressly to you, Donald, but thanks for answering, your reaction is also informative.
Yes.
Some characters will have respect, some delicacy. Others will be complete jerks and not realize the problem.
Right.
There is one doctor, thankfully I don't know his name to lambast him here, although of course I'd be more professional than putting his name on this, who had no pretense about my father's prognosis. It was rude, abhorrent to somebody trying to hold out hope about a miracle, and hardly defensible even if he didn't want to lie about it.
Yeah, I remember hearing your mom tell this story. It did not sound good.
No, it was absolutely terrible. It was atrocious.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Not to rag on this guy. There are some people who are like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he is a doctor. Again, like, the only good thing is that he's not giving you false pretenses.
Right, exactly.
The only thing.
Right, yes.
Obviously the other characters don't change.
Mm-hmm.
So don't start writing them differently in that reveal.
Right, yeah.
Sure, your densest, comedy relief-esque characters will probably adjust their behavior on learning that someone is mourning next to them, but they likely wouldn't come in sensing that despair in the room to treat it carefully, right?
Right.
Just make sure that the natural course of things takes place, where someone would react with sympathy to those struggling.
Right, exactly. Well, like, for me, thinking about your characters that aren't grieving... think about your characters that aren't grieving from their perspective, seeing the ones they care about grieve. Like get into their shoes. Like, how would they respond? Would they know how to react or the best way to react?
Probably not.
Remember the times when people in real life grieved and recall how you reacted to them. Now, as of this week, both of us are now quite experienced in this regard.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so we've had to deal with the other's loss and reacted to it accordingly. Like, for me, I'm always trying to be there personally for David whenever he needs it, giving him as much or as little space as he wants, and make sure he knows just how much I'm there for him. Like, think about these times in your life and write them into your story as needed. Now, obviously, again, characters are different from real life, but I'm just saying, like, sort of...
You have a reference.
Yes.
Use it.
Yeah, exactly. The emotions of real life really help enhance the emotions of a story.
Yeah.
So...
You're not going to face this alone. Similarly, your characters won't. Whether you really appreciate people hanging over you and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you sure you're all right?"
Right.
Or if you want those people draping themselves because that way you feel the affection that you can't get from the person that's gone on. Now, It's not always death. It isn't expressly losing someone. It could be a major accident that causes surgery, causes paralysis,
it could be
traumatic
a bad breakup.
experience. It isn't always death, but obviously in our case, recently it has been, so that's why we refer to it. But It's not exclusive to that, so please don't get that idea. Listeners.
Well, like for our next question is, as a little PSA, what should our listeners do to deal with their own grief? Not funny that you mentioned about like it doesn't always about death. I don't know if I've ever. This might be a funny time to tell the story.
Sure.
Of when I broke up with my first girlfriend, and I got drunk off of chocolate milk. It was not spiked. Let me say, it was not spiked. It was in a.
I don't know how else you'd get drunk off chocolate milk.
It was in a Nesquik bottle. Here's what happened. Okay. Here's what happened. There was like so at this college house I was a part of. Penny did not live here, by the way. At this point, this was the only time he was separate from me. He stayed at my parents' house. Yep. But a lot of Fridays we would have like a party, and they'd be drinking. And this was the Friday after I broke up with my girlfriend,
your ex,
and my ex. And then I told people I had a Nesquik bottle of chocolate milk like I got from the store or something, and I was telling people jokingly, "I'm drinking my sorrows away. I'm drinking my sorrows away," and I was drinking with everyone else, and I was like, "Guys, look, I'm drinking my sorrows away." And then, as the night went on, my vision got fuzzier, my speech got more slurred.
Oh my god!
I felt drowsy. I could not focus. I could not walk straight.
Oh man.
I was talking a lot.
Spiked?
I was talking a lot like this.
Oh wow!
And someone did the focus with the finger thing, and I was like, "Whoa!"
Couldn't do it. Yeah.
It was purely placebo effect. But I got drunk.
You needed it apparently.
Like. And if it was spiked, it was the sneakiest spiking ever because I had that bottle with me at all times.
Just let me slip it. Bye. How are you doing? Don't look at your bottle. Hi. Yeah. Look at my.
So other than getting drunk off of chocolate milk, what should our listeners do to deal with their own grief?
Real quick story.
Yes.
I mentioned earlier I sing barbershop harmony. I went to a chorus rehearsal last Thursday, and afterwards they were going out for a little. They usually have a drink. They call it the afterglow, if you will. And I wanted to go, but I was thinking about, do I want to drink? And the thing that I said in that moment to myself was, generally, if you're drinking to forget, you have to drink a lot, and I never have been that drunk.
Right.
But, what would I be forgetting anyway? I don't want to forget.
Right. No, exactly.
It's not like there are a lot of bad things to, forget. Now, breakups, I understand, but...
Yeah, that's a little different.
This is my father. I want to remember him. I don't want to forget. It's not like I've experienced bad things. I've experienced nothing but love and support from all kinds of places and all kinds of people.
Right.
Saying that, when you're in your own grief, you have to discover which is most effective for you.
Right, yeah.
Maybe it's your inner circle's shoulders.
Right, yes.
Your own room.
Yes.
For the safety of being alone to process it.
Right.
Your support network.
Yes.
Like Facebooking people you haven't talked to in 10 years, so just so you had something to do in the midst of hearing about a major accident half a world away.
Right.
Writing it down to attempt verbalizing those conflicting, swirling, impossible to organize thoughts. Talking it out, see previous, or whatever it is. Then stick to it in a crisis. These things aren't predictable, never wanted, and life-altering, especially in case of close friends or family members in death. Obviously, I was thinking about that. I didn't think about the breakup thing, so that obviously is less life-altering, I suppose.
Yes, of course. But, well I know. That's just a little different.
So, have your method of coping figured out and utilize it every chance you need.
Right.
Please remember, we don't have to grieve alone all the time. Especially because other people also feel for you or the person affected. Reiterating, there is a time for laughter, even amidst tragedy.
Yeah,
so use it to relieve your sorrow, even if it's just a brief moment.
I mean, like, you've heard us. Like, this has been a more serious episode, but there's still been plenty of jokes. Like, that's just who we are. Like, especially who I am.
We can't help it.
Especially who I am. Like I've said, like, last episode, I always have the funny meter on. Like, I need it, especially.
Right. Well, especially in the light of sadness. You need that.
So
if you need help of any stripe, if it's just a shoulder to cry on, if it's actual therapy, if it's somebody who's been through the same thing, a lot of those guys that I sing with, they say, because a lot of them are older men, they've obviously most of them have lost their fathers at some point, so they know what I'm going through. And they've offered their support. It meant a lot. I mean, hearing the same thing 1,000 times doesn't necessarily make you feel that much better. You know, like the one that got me is they say, they didn't even know my dad personally.
Right.
But they say, we know he was proud of you.
That's nice.
It's really nice.
That's real nice.
But it doesn't replace the fact that I can't see him anymore, and it just got me started.
Yeah.
Here I go
The tissue box is right there, dude.
Here I go again. But if you need help of any stripe, be sure to seek it out. Right. Barring any of these suggestions, wait for an interminable amount of time and then simply start writing about how your grandfather's death made you really feel. Like some moron here did. Well, I mean, whatever it actually was. It doesn't have to be your grandfather's death, but...
it could be your cockatiel.
It could be your cockatiel falling over in the middle of the night, yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, not to bring that up.
No, it's okay. I mean, I brought it up. I was the one who brought it up. So, so for me, what I'd like to say is it's okay to cry. Don't bottle it in all the time. Don't feel weak because of how you feel. We're not robots. We feel things. Do it in your own time, too. Like, if you prefer, save your emotions until you're alone. Also, and this is really important, don't kick yourself. It's not your fault they're gone. There was nothing you could do. Push the guilt aside.
Unless you caused the accident.
Yes.
But that's a very specific
most
case.
of the time, it's not your fault.
And one thing might...
And I'd argue, if it is your fault, lie to yourself. You need it. Like
you need to know that there are other things at work here.
Yes. So
there's some times that you can't see if there's a plan, right?
Right.
Like in my dad's case, he was driving home.
Right.
The truck in front of him was stopped.
Right.
He couldn't.
Yeah.
His brain did. His heart did later on. But it's my dad used to tell me real men know when to cry. So even if you're of the male persuasion listeners, it's okay.
Right.
There's a time. What's that Bible verse? Time to grieve and a time for time to grieve and a time to mourn, time to reap and a time to sow. All of these things in balance. All of these things exist.
Right.
So, sorry. There's one thing I want to reiterate. I said earlier, other people will move on faster than you will.
Yes, exactly. Well,
they will support you, but obviously their lives aren't stopping either.
Right.
So, hopefully you can get over it quickly. Hopefully you're allowed to, resume normalcy quickly. Obviously, I have to go back to Japan and keep working at some point.
Right.
But the sooner rather than later, because the longer I stay here, the harder it will be to go back.
Right.
The harder it will be to leave my family.
Right.
The harder it will be to put off all this work and let it pile up because nobody else can do it for me.
Right, exactly. Well, and it definitely it's getting a little easier every day for me, for my bird and for my uncle and such. It's
right. And your dog.
Yeah, my dog. It's just my bird. The bird hit me the hardest. Thank you. It's just because he was always there. He there'd be a lot of times where I'd be recording and he'd be right over there on the.
I would promise to be there for you, but until I have a cloning machine, I can't do that.
Right, exactly.
Although fun joke to share with you listeners, I used to say if I had a dime for every time I wished I had a cloning machine.
I think we've said this on the podcast before.
I could have built the damn thing by now.
Yeah, no, I think we've actually said that on the podcast before. But anyways, in terms of recovery, Find something else to do to recollect yourself. Take a hot shower. Get a good meal. Buy a 5,000 calorie milkshake for all I care.
That sounds great. Let's order a pizza.
Yeah, and a milkshake.
And
no matter your eating or health habits, you can usually afford to splurge a little.
Right.
For one time. If you're super, super like healthy and like want to stay fit, just say, this one day, I'm going to treat myself.
And this is just in recovery from grief. If it takes too long, that it becomes a new habit, then it becomes a different problem.
Yes, don't do that. I'm going to say just one time, just get it. Also, like David and I are going to a theme park later this week, and I'm really looking forward to that. All the adrenaline from all the roller coasters and spinny twirly rides. It sounds like exactly what I need to wash the despair away, even if just temporarily.
Spending time with your friends is the greatest salve for despair.
Right.
People, well, not just your friends, your loved ones.
Yes. Well, sometimes they're both.
Well, I mean, yeah, they can be both. But, like, in this case, obviously we're talking about this. This is a trip between friends. I'm not going with my family. I'm sure they could use that distraction too. But.
Right. Also, if you're religious, tell yourself it's not over.
Right.
You'll see them again in the great beyond. And finally, recognize that they would want you to continue onward, even if they're not there. They don't want you to wallow in despair. They want you to be the best you can be.
Absolutely.
Do that. Honor their legacy. You've been given the opportunity to persist when they haven't. Use it well.
Life is precious. Mm-hmm. You only get one on this earth.
Yes.
My dad has walked into eternity, which will last a whole lot longer than the 70-plus years he managed to live.
Right.
But because he is not here, I can't put everything on hold. I need to continue on for his sake as well.
That's what he would have wanted.
That's what he would have wanted. And this is one thing, my family, both of the times that this has happened in my immediate family, that we have a celebration of life rather than the finality of a funeral.
Right. Well, I think a lot of cultures do that. Like Vikings like to do that. They hold a great feast when one of their warriors falls and like tell great stories of. Like,
although now I think about it, when my dad's younger sister passed away, that was a suicide. I can't remember what we did for her.
I remember that.
That was a few years back. And you know that in a way that grieved me too. But it goes to show when you're closer to people, it will have a stronger impact on you.
Right.
I only got to see that aunt once every few years or so.
Right.
And so I didn't know her terribly well. And so, you know, it was just kind of a thing. Like, yeah, you're sad, and you give your condolences to the people who are most affected by it, and you move on. As I said, other people move on a lot faster.
Right.
Because everybody processes these things differently. What you have to do is you have to find what will work to get you from the grief towards your future.
Right.
So your life can continue, so you have some form of normal. And whatever that takes, find out now.
Yeah.
Before you need it.
Right.
I mean, it's really great to see these people come back and, you know, send a message of we're praying for your family.
Right.
Our thoughts are with you. And when I haven't talked to them since maybe even before graduation or perhaps longer ago, but you know, you can't. Sometimes they'll be there, but they're going to move on before you're finished moving on.
Right. Exactly. And like, I don't know, it's been touching for me too to see. Like, I keep underplaying the fact that it's a bird rather than a human, but I'm sure people, it's people think, pets are very important, but like, I just don't think it's as important, of course, as a father. But like, I don't know, but like all the messages I got when I said that Penny died. And like a lot of them were like Penny was very sweet, or like a lot of them were also like, I know how important he was to you.
Exactly.
Like,
I mean, loss is loss.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, he was always there. Like always. And he was such a reflection of myself. He was such a
he was a part of who you were.
Yeah. So it really does feel like part of me's gone, and the fact that I got so much an outpour of that and it's just,
it means a lot.
It does.
Sometimes it leaves you speechless. Like we're dragging on longer than we intended to, but I'm going to tell one last story.
A lot of this will be edited.
One last story. When I was in Japan, thankfully, I had gotten home from work, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my phone, which is over on the table charging, and I'm getting a call from my mom via Facebook, and I'm like, wait, why is she calling me? So I go over, pick it up, and turns out, because at that time, I knew it was very early in the morning back home, and, she told me that my dad had been in a car accident and he was in the hospital. And my apartment is not very big. But, you know, as soon as I get off the phone and, you know, this emotion starts hitting me, I'm like, oh, God, no, please don't tell me this is what I think it is. I cannot do this again.
Right.
Even though the last one was literally 14 years ago that it affected me so deeply. You know, it's like, I cannot be doing this again. I do not want to have to deal with this. And so she gives me a call back. As things progress, at least I was, you know, in my apartment. So, you know, if I needed to be unsheltered with my emotions, I wasn't trying to present a public face or whatever it was, you know? And she'd give me updates. But it was amazing because, like, I couldn't do anything. I was in Japan, half a world away from where my father was suffering.
Right.
And so the only thing that made me feel like I could do anything was using social media. And I went on as many groups as I could stand and said, hey, my dad was in a car accident. I need prayers. My family needs prayers. If there's anything you can do, please. And immediately, people that I expected, that as soon as they saw it, people that I didn't expect at all, are just pouring out the well wishes and we're praying for you, we're with you, we're standing behind you. And you know something that I've come to appreciate from all of this? Even if you don't see the support that you have in the life that you live, moments like these that make it clear as day that they have always been there, that they have always supported you, even if you didn't know them terribly well. They will put you on their shoulders.
Right.
They'll wrap their arms around you, figuratively or literally, depending on where they are. And to finally acknowledge that, because of who my dad was, because I don't think that there are many people cross with him ever. I haven't met one yet. You know, to see their support meant the world to me.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it being on Facebook is that you can always look back on it.
Yep. So. If I ever miss him, I can go back and see that. I mean, it's also kind of sad because one of the last things that I got to say to my dad on Facebook, it was, well, aside from the FaceTime call when I said my goodbyes, I did not, small spoiler alert, I did not make it back to America in time.
Right.
We knew he had passed. I mean, I said that we...
Yeah, you did say that.
What the heck?
Yeah. Come on, mate. Come on, Matt.
Sorry, my mind isn't working.
Okay.
But, you know, I was hoping to make it there. Like, my mom had asked if it came to putting him on life support, did I want them to cut life support before I got there? And I said, I need to have the chance to see him. I need to try.
Right.
And so we did. We did the best I could, but because of the way things worked, it did not happen.
Right.
But, you know, when I'm over in Japan and I'm getting all of these messages that just build you up and build you up and build you up, we're praying for you, this could happen, and you start holding hope. And then you get a phone call from mom saying, oh, he's getting worse. It's
like a roller coaster, isn't it?
It was like a roller coaster. So I'll look forward to experiencing that in the flesh, which has nothing to do with my emotions when we go there.
It's a metaphor.
It's going to be a lot of fun. But we're really thankful that you are sticking around to listen. We hope, obviously, we cannot prevent grief happening in your life, but we hope that if there anything that we have said helps you either, you know, reflect it in your stories or deal with it in your own life, then that would be the best reaction we thought
we needed to do this. We're writing podcasts, and writers always are like, they like to put in their emotions. It's not like,
well, if you don't, it's probably not as fun,
right?
To read, I should say.
People like writers. If you want to write and you have no emotions, you're a scientific writer. This is not that kind of podcast, except for whatever episode we did.
The one episode we did. For more on that.
Well, I'm not going to do a cheap plug because I don't remember which one it was.
Was it? Oh, I don't remember.
Who cares?
But go check out that episode.
Ding. Ding. No, it's like ding.
Ding.
But
I had to try and get one in there.
Of course. Well,
but that's it for us on the topic of grief.
You will not be here for the next couple of episodes because you got some things to figure out with with your family and such.
Right.
The next episode, I've actually already recorded it with Christina.
One of our good friends.
Christina Eilert, not Christina Franklin.
Wait, so you're using one's married name and not the other?
These are the names I said on the description.
They prefer. Okay.
Yeah, and also in the description of the episode, it's Christina Eilert and Christina Franklin is what it says. So,
Anyway, you might see a character come back from the Writ theme park.
Right, exactly.
Maybe.
And so I recorded one with her, and it's the romance one. The Why is Romance so hard to write? That was going to be our next one. And then after that, we're going to do 2 random ones. And then after that, we'll finish up the set that we did.
Sorry for the random... we've been trying to keep to the set, but obviously... circumstances happen, life happens. Or I'm just glad that we were able to get together and record this.
Yes, I am
even
too.
Even if it doesn't feel like it, like right now, it's really helpful to process with somebody. And so if it's processing thanks to this podcast, great. Obviously, for the two of us, it's been a fun experience as well. But that's it for this week. I don't imagine we'll ever do another grief related episode. I can't rule it out, but I don't.
I feel like we did a succinct enough job here that in case grief does happen to us again, and it will.
Yeah.
One of us, we're not going to die at the same time, you and I. And we're probably
that would be poetic if we did, but let's hope that doesn't happen.
Watch as one of the roller coasters crashes as we're on it.
I don't need to cause my mom any more grief right now. Okay.
But anyways,
we haven't even had the service yet.
If you want to contact us, and if you want to give us support, write us in and stuff. Or if you have any more questions,
us, not write us in.
You know what I mean. Write us into the legal documents. Make sure.
A trust for the Writ. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, contact us at Matt D. That is 2 T's at MatthewDonaldCreator.com.
Right.
Any general questions, specific questions. Obviously, we are not grief counselors, so we can't really point you into the right direction for those resources. But if you feel comfortable sharing, then please do.
Yes.
If you're going to specify co-host, we share Matt D, so please specify. You can use your own email system with that email address, or go to the Matthew Donald Creator page and just use the Contact Us tab there. So please feel free. We'd love to hear from you. Especially, please let us know if you'd like us to read your stuff on the air. We'll be happy to do that for you. We don't want to do it without your permission, though.
Of course, obviously. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because I love all of you. 64,000.
Particularly poignant in this particular recording.
Yes.
Thanks for taking the time to stay with us, listeners, in this very unusual, very special episode of the Writ.
The drugs have been taken.
The two twits who talk about writing.
That was meant to be a callback to the sitcom thing, but that didn't work out.
No, it didn't work out. Okay. Not all of our jokes land, obviously, but that's okay. Thanks for listening to us. We'll be he'll be back with more. Thanks, Christina, for recording when you hear this. Obviously, it's a real help to have somebody who's able to come in and contribute for me, because obviously I got a lot of stuff to do with.
Obviously. Great
fun.
Pray for us. Unless you're not religious, then think of us.
Any well wishes as we're processing our grief, and if you're fans of us on the Facebook page or through Twitter or whatever, if you have grief, I'm sure that we will do our best to support you in that time as well, because it's hard. A lot of other people experience these things at the same time, irrespective of what you're going through.
Right. Exactly.
So, until next time, then, when he's back with more, thanks to a guest co-host. I'm Matt David.
I'm Matt Donald.
Thanks for listening.
We did it without interrupting each other.
Because we're in the same room for once.
I know.
It must be the trick. I don't know why we're celebrating this now, but anyway.
All right.
Until next time, keep writing, listeners. Thanks for paying and thanks for listening.
Keep writing. Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Especially this topic that's relevant. All right. See you next time.
Bye.
The Writ.